The purple and yellow bruise around my left eye caught the light as I stood in the center of my living room. 68 years old today, and this is what I had to show for it. A moment ago, the room had buzzed with conversation friends from my bridge club, former colleagues from the school where I'd taught for 30 years, neighbors who'd known me since James was in diapers. Now silence fell like a heavy curtain. I could feel every pair of eyes on me on the bruise I'd failed to conceal despite my best efforts with makeup. The chandelier's light, the beautiful Swarovski piece Robert had installed for our 25th anniversary, now felt like an interrogation lamp. My black silk dress, selected to make me feel elegant on my birthday, suddenly seemed insufficient armor. 3 days ago, I'd still been whole. 3 days ago, I hadn't known how quickly dignity could be stripped away by those you've given everything to. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked away the seconds of unbearable silence. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Then James rose from his seat on the leather sofa, his 6'2" frame commanding attention just as his father's once had. My son, my only child. The boy I'd nursed through chickenpox and heartbreaks, driven to countless baseball practices, put through law school. My chest tightened as he cleared his throat. It was my wife, James announced, his voice ringing with unmistakable pride. She taught her some respect. Victoria sat beside him in her cream designer dress, her red-soled heels crossed at the ankle. A smirk played across her perfectly lined lips as she reached for her champagne flute. The diamond on her finger, far larger than the one Robert had given me, caught the light and scattered it like shrapnel. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. My oldest friend, Marianne, gasped. My next-door neighbor, David, who'd helped me change flat tires and clear gutters since Robert died, lowered his eyes to the carpet. No one moved to stand beside me. No one spoke up. The weight of humiliation pressed against my chest, making it difficult to breathe. But I remained standing back straight as a rod, the way my mother had taught me. A lady never crumbles in public, she'd said. Save your tears for the pillow. I felt rather than saw William enter the room. My older brother, perpetually running late since childhood, had finally arrived. At 72, his once black hair now silver, he still moved with the confidence of the respected pediatrician he'd been for 40 years. His eyes locked with mine across the room, taking in the bruise, then shifting to James and Victoria. Something changed in William's expression, the same look he'd worn when we were children, and neighborhood bullies had pushed me down. Without a word, he crossed the room, but instead of coming to me, he approached James. From his breast pocket, he withdrew a cream-colored envelope. I think you should see this, William said quietly, placing it in James's hand. And then reconsider what you just said about your mother. 3 days earlier, I'd driven to James and Victoria's Tudor-style home in Brookline. The autumn leaves had just begun to turn, splashing the manicured yards with gold and crimson. I'd brought the Mitchell family necklace, a delicate gold chain with a single diamond pendant that had belonged to Robert's grandmother. Noah's 8th birthday was coming up, and though the necklace was traditionally passed to daughters, I thought it might be nice for him to have it for his future wife someday. With no daughter or granddaughter to pass it to, Noah was the next generation. I parked my Volvo in their circular driveway, noting Victoria's gleaming Range Rover and James's Mercedes. Success had come quickly to my son after Harvard Law. At 42, he was already a senior partner at his firm specializing in corporate mergers and acquisitions. Victoria managed public relations for luxury hotel chains, though she'd scaled back after Noah was born. Their life looked perfect from the outside, the life Robert and I had wanted for our son. The housekeeper, Maria, answered the door, her face lighting up at the sight of me. Mrs. Mitchell, so good to see you. They didn't tell me you were coming today. It's a surprise visit, Maria. Are they home? Mr. James is at work, but Mrs. Victoria is upstairs in her office. Noah is at soccer practice. I stepped into the marble-floored foyer, noting how little had changed since my last visit 3 months ago. Victoria redecorated constantly, but the overall effect remained the same: expensive, tasteful, and impersonal, like a high-end hotel. No finger paintings on the refrigerator, no family photos on the walls. Even Noah's existence was neatly contained to the playroom and his bedroom upstairs. I'll let Mrs. Victoria know you're here, Maria said, turning toward the staircase. No need to disturb her if she's working. I'll wait in the living room. Maria nodded and returned to her duties in the kitchen. I made my way to the living room, a formal space with white sofas and glass tables that always made me nervous about spilling something. I sat perched on the edge of a sofa, the small jewelry box containing the necklace in my purse. The house was quiet except for the faint sound of Victoria's voice from upstairs. She must have been on a call. I heard her laugh, that practiced social laugh she used at parties. Then her voice grew serious. I couldn't make out the words, just the cadence of her speech rising and falling. I noticed a folder on the coffee table labeled Noah Medical. Concern immediately flooded me. Was Noah sick? Why hadn't James mentioned anything? I hesitated only briefly before opening it. If my grandson was ill, I needed to know. Inside were standard pediatric records, vaccination charts, growth curves, notes from annual checkups. Noah had always been a healthy child, if smaller than average for his age. I flipped through relief washing over me until I reached a lab report from about a year ago. Blood type AB positive. I frowned. Something wasn't right. I taught high school biology for 3 decades. Blood types were basic genetics. James was type O like his father. I'm type A. If James was Noah's biological father, Noah could only be type A or O, never AB. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Either there had been a lab error, or Noah wasn't James's biological son. I checked the date on the report 14 months ago. I remembered James mentioning that Noah had needed some routine tests after a persistent fever. Had he seen these results? Did he understand what they meant? Victoria's voice grew louder as she descended the stairs, still on her phone call. No, he still has no idea. We need to keep it that way, she was saying. I've managed this long. I can handle it. Yes, I know what I'm risking. She appeared in the doorway, freezing when she saw me. Her blue eyes widened, and her perfectly manicured hand tightened around her phone. I'll call you back, she said curtly, ending the call. Her expression shifted seamlessly from shock to a practiced smile. Eleanor, what a surprise. James didn't mention you were stopping by today. Her eyes dropped to the open folder in my lap, and the smile vanished like a light switching off. What are you doing with those? Victoria's voice turned to ice. Those are private medical records. I closed the folder slowly, my heart pounding. I was concerned about Noah. I thought he might be sick. So you decided to go through our personal files. Victoria stepped into the room, her heels clicking aggressively against the hardwood floor. This is exactly why James gets frustrated with you. You have no sense of boundaries. I stood clutching the folder. Victoria, we need to talk about what's in this file. Give me that, she snapped, snatching it from my hands. You had no right. Noah's blood type, I said quietly. It's not compatible with James being his father. Victoria's face drained of color, then flushed deep red. How dare you? I'm not making accusations. I'm stating a scientific fact. Either there's been a lab error, or what, say it. Victoria's voice rose sharply. Say what you're implying. I'm asking if James knows. Does my son know that Noah might not be his biological child? Victoria's laugh was brittle. This is rich coming from you, the controlling mother-in-law who can't stop interfering in our lives. You've never approved of me, never thought I was good enough for your precious son. And now you're inventing reasons to drive a wedge between us. I'm not inventing basic genetics, Victoria. Blood doesn't lie. Get out! Victoria's voice trembled with rage. Get out of my house right now. I stood my ground. I want to know if James is aware of this. James and Noah are none of your business. James is my son and Noah is my grandson. Noah is my son, Victoria shouted, stepping toward me. Mine, and James is my husband, not your little boy anymore. When will you understand that? When will you stop trying to control everything? I'm not trying to control anything. I'm trying to protect my family from lies. Victoria's face contorted with fury. You want to talk about lies? How about the lie that you've sold to James his entire life? That you're this perfect, sacrificing mother who only wants what's best for him? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You're nothing but a manipulative, lonely old woman who can't stand that her son has built a life that doesn't revolve around her. James sees it too. Why do you think he keeps you at arm's length? Why do you think he dreads your visits? Each word landed like a physical blow. I took a step back, bumping into the glass side table. Victoria, I know exactly what you want. You want James all to yourself. You've resented me from day one, questioned every decision I've made about our home, our marriage, how we're raising Noah. You've undermined me at every turn. And now this. She waved the medical file. You think you can destroy my family because you found something you don't understand. That's not what Enough. Victoria lunged forward, pushing me hard with both hands. I stumbled backward, losing my balance. My hip caught the edge of the glass table, tipping it over with a crash. As I fell, my face struck the corner of the marble fireplace hearth. Pain exploded through my left eye and cheekbone. For a moment, darkness edged my vision and a high-pitched ringing filled my ears. I heard the front door open, then James's voice calling out, "Hello! What was that noise?" Victoria's heels clicked rapidly across the floor. "James, thank God you're home early. Your mother came by unannounced and started going through our personal files. When I confronted her, she got hysterical and tripped." I pushed myself up from the floor, my hand going to my face. It came away with blood. The room spun slightly as I got to my feet. James appeared in the doorway, his expression shifting from confusion to concern to something harder as Victoria whispered in his ear, "Mom, are you okay?" His tone was more irritated than concerned. "What happened?" "Your wife pushed me," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "After I found Noah's medical records showing his blood type doesn't match yours." James's face darkened. "What are you talking about? Why were you going through our files?" "James, listen to me. Noah's blood type is AB positive. You're type O. That's genetically impossible if—" "Stop it," Victoria cut in. "James, she's trying to cause problems. You know how she gets always criticizing me, always finding fault." James looked between us then at the overturned table and scattered contents of my purse on the floor. The jewelry box had fallen open, the Mitchell family necklace gleaming on the hardwood. "What's that?" Victoria asked, her eyes narrowing at the necklace. "A family heirloom I was bringing for Noah," I said. "For his birthday." James ran a hand through his hair, the same gesture his father used to make when stressed. "Mom, I think you should go." "James, please listen." "No, Mom, you listen." James's voice hardened. "This has to stop. The surprise visits, the criticism, the constant undermining of our parenting. And now accusing Victoria of what infidelity, having another man's child based on a blood test you snooped through without permission. The science doesn't lie, James. You know that. What I know is that you've never given Victoria a chance. From the day we got married, you've treated her like she wasn't good enough. Dad would be ashamed of how you've behaved." The mention of Robert was a knife to my heart. "Don't you dare bring your father into this. He would have wanted to know the truth." "The truth?" James laughed bitterly. "The truth is that you're a lonely, bitter woman who can't accept that I have my own life now. Victoria's right, you're trying to drive a wedge between us because you can't stand not being the center of my world anymore." Victoria moved to his side, slipping her arm through his. The picture of marital unity. "James, she needs help. This obsession with controlling our lives isn't healthy." I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised alone for 15 years after Robert's heart attack took him far too young. The boy who'd crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd cried on my shoulder after his first heartbreak, who'd held my hand at his father's funeral and promised to always take care of me. Now he stood with his arm around a woman who'd just assaulted me, looking at me like I was a stranger. No worse than a stranger, a nuisance. "James," I said quietly, "your wife pushed me. I fell and hit my face. That's how this happened." I gestured to my eye, which was already swelling shut. James's jaw tightened. "Mom, you tripped over the table. Victoria tried to catch you. If you're going to make wild accusations on top of everything else, then I think it's definitely time for you to leave. You're choosing to believe that I came into your home, went through your private papers, for no reason made up a story about Noah's paternity, then tripped and injured myself, rather than considering that your wife might be lying to you." "Get out," Victoria hissed. "Now." James took a deep breath. "Mom, please go home. We can talk about this when you're thinking more clearly." I bent down slowly, painfully, to gather my purse and the necklace. Neither James nor Victoria moved to help me. With as much dignity as I could muster with a bleeding face and aching body, I walked to the door. "James," I said, turning back one last time. "Call your Uncle William. Ask him to explain blood types to you. Then decide if I'm the one who's been lying to you." The drive home was a blur of pain and shock. Tears obscured my vision from my good eye while the left one swelled completely shut. At a stoplight, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror and barely recognized myself. The elegant woman who'd left her house that morning had been replaced by someone battered and broken. I pulled into my driveway in Wellesley, the home where James had grown up, where Robert and I had built our life together. The two-story colonial with the blue shutters seemed to welcome me back, offering sanctuary. Inside, I went straight to the phone in the kitchen and dialed William's number. "Eleanor," My brother's voice was warm as always. "I was just about to call you. Happy Burr, what's wrong?" He'd always been able to read my voice even as children. "William, I need you." My composure finally broke sobs racking my body. "I'm on my way. Are you hurt? Should I call an ambulance?" "No ambulance. Just come. Please." 20 minutes later, William was at my door, his medical bag in hand. His face went pale when he saw me. "My God, Eleanor." "What happened?" I led him to the living room and told him everything: the medical records, Victoria's reaction, the push, James's disbelief. As William gently cleaned the cut near my eye and applied butterfly bandages, I saw the same protective fury in his eyes that had been there when we were children, and he'd defended me from neighborhood bullies. "We need to get you to the emergency room. You might have a concussion, and that eye needs to be properly examined." "Later," I said. "First, I need your help with something else." William listened as I explained what I needed. At first, he hesitated, citing medical ethics. But when I showed him the photograph of Noah, I kept in my wallet the sweet boy with features that had always seemed more Victoria than James. His resolve wavered. "This isn't just about exposing Victoria's lie," I told him. "If Noah isn't James's biological son, he deserves to know for medical reasons. Family history matters for health care." William nodded slowly. "I'll see what I can do. I still have colleagues at the hospital lab who owe me favors. But Eleanor, are you prepared for what this might do to your relationship with James? If you're right, his world is about to shatter." "His world is built on lies, then," I said quietly. "And I'd rather lose him temporarily to truth than permanently to deception." After William left with a DNA sample, a hairbrush of James's I'd kept from when he lived at home, I made my way upstairs to my bedroom. The room I'd once shared with Robert still held echoes of him, his cologne on the dresser. I couldn't bear to clear his reading glasses in the nightstand drawer. I sat at my vanity mirror, examining my injured face under the unforgiving light. The woman who stared back at me was a stranger. One eye swollen shut and purple, a cut along my cheekbone, my dignity in tatters. But somewhere in the depths of my remaining good eye, I saw a spark of the fighter I'd always been. After Robert died suddenly at 48, leaving me a widow at 43 with a 13-year-old son, I'd had two choices: crumble or carry on. I chose to carry on. I'd returned to teaching within a month, determined to provide stability for James. When the insurance money proved insufficient for James's college fund, I'd turned Robert's hobby, designing custom jewelry, into a small business. What had started as a modest operation in our spare bedroom had grown over 15 years into Mitchell Fine Jewelry, with 3 locations across Massachusetts and an annual revenue of over $30 million. I'd built it slowly, carefully, reinvesting profits and expanding conservatively. James had been too busy with law school, then his career, then Victoria, to pay much attention to Mom's little jewelry shop. He assumed I lived comfortably on my teacher's pension and whatever modest income the shop provided. Only William knew the truth, that I was worth more than James and Victoria combined. I'd never flaunted my success. Robert had taught me that true class wasn't about showing off. I lived well, but modestly, donating generously to education charities and setting aside a substantial trust for Noah. And now everything I'd built, everything I'd planned, seemed to be crumbling because of Victoria's lies and James's blindness. I opened my jewelry box and took out the pearl earrings Robert had given me on our first anniversary. "For the most elegant woman I've ever known," he'd said. I put them on, then covered my bruised eye with a silk scarf tied around my head. It wouldn't fool anyone, but it was better than nothing. I had 3 days until my birthday party. 3 days for the swelling to go down. 3 days for William to get the proof we needed. William called the next evening. "Eleanor, I have the results." His voice told me everything I needed to know. "Noah isn't James's son. The DNA comparison is conclusive. There's 0 chance of paternity. I've documented everything, had it verified by 2 separate lab technicians who owe me favors. Victoria has been lying for 8 years. I closed my eyes, feeling no triumph, only a deep sadness for my son and grandson. "Thank you, William." "What will you do now?" "Nothing until my birthday. I want witnesses when the truth comes out. People who will stand by James when his world falls apart." The day of my 68th birthday dawned bright and clear. The caterers arrived early, setting up in the dining room and backyard. The bruise around my eye had faded from deep purple to a sickly yellow-green, still impossible to hide completely. I'd done my best with makeup, but the evidence of Victoria's violence remained visible. Guests began arriving at 3 friends, former colleagues' neighbors. They greeted me warmly, though I caught the concerned glances, the whispered questions. I offered a vague explanation about tripping while gardening. Few seemed convinced, but no one pressed. James and Victoria arrived an hour late. Noah ran to me immediately, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Happy birthday, Grandma. What happened to your eye?" Before I could answer, Victoria cut in. "Noah, remember what we discussed in the car? Grandma had an accident. We don't need to keep mentioning it." I knelt to Noah's level, my heart aching. Biologically, James's or not, this boy was still my grandson in every way that mattered. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm fine now. Why don't you go try some of those chocolate strawberries? I had the caterer make them especially for you." As Noah dashed off, James approached, giving me a stiff kiss on the cheek. "Happy birthday, Mom. You're looking, well." Victoria hung back her smile, not reaching her eyes. "Eleanor, quite the gathering you've put together." "Thank you both for coming," I said, matching Victoria's coolness. "James, there's someone I'd like you to speak with later. Uncle William has something important to discuss with you." James's expression tightened. "Mom, if this is about what happened the other day." "Later," I said firmly. "Today is a celebration." The party continued, a strange undercurrent of tension beneath the festive atmosphere. I moved among my guests, accepting birthday wishes and deflecting questions about my injury. James watched me warily from across the room, while Victoria maintained a practiced smile, one hand always possessively on James's arm. At 5 o'clock, I asked everyone to gather in the living room for a toast. Standing in the center of the room beneath the chandelier Robert had installed, I prepared to address my guests. That's when the whispering began, gazes fixed not on me, but on my bruised face. The room went silent, the kind of heavy silence that falls when uncomfortable truths hover in the air. James stood suddenly, champagne flute in hand. His voice rang out clear and sharp. "It was my wife. She taught her some respect." Victoria's lips curled into a satisfied smirk as she sipped her champagne. I felt the weight of 68 years on my shoulders in that moment. The joys, the sorrows, the victories, the defeats. But most of all, I felt the weight of my own silence over the years. The times I'd bitten my tongue for peace, swallowed my pride for family harmony, accepted less than I deserved out of love for my son. That silence had cost me dearly. It would cost me no more. From the corner of my eye, I saw William enter slightly late, as always. He took in the scene with a quick glance, understanding immediately what had happened. Without a word, he crossed the room, not to me, but to James. From his breast pocket, he withdrew a cream-colored envelope. "I think you should see this," William said quietly, placing it in James's hand. "And then reconsider what you just said about your mother." The cream envelope trembled in James's hands, his attorney's fingers suddenly clumsy as they broke the seal. The room held its collective breath. Even the ice in the champagne glasses seemed to stop clinking. I watched my son's face transform as he unfolded the document, inside confusion, disbelief, then a pallor that made his tanned skin turn ashen. "This can't be right," James whispered, the paper shaking more violently now. "There must be some mistake." Victoria's smirk vanished as she set down her champagne flute and moved toward him. "James, what is it?" He stepped away from her, reaching hand, his eyes never leaving the document. "A DNA test. Comparing my DNA to Noah's." His voice cracked. "It says there's 0% chance I'm his biological father." The silence in the room deepened, became a living thing with weight and substance. My guests shifted uncomfortably, caught in a family drama none of them had anticipated when accepting my birthday invitation. I could see them calculating escape routes, wondering if they should discreetly slip away or remain frozen in place. Victoria's composure cracked like fine china dropped on marble. "Let me see that." She snatched the paper from James's hand, her eyes scanning frantically. This is fabricated, a cheap attempt to cause problems." She turned to William, fury transforming her delicate features. "You did this, didn't you? Eleanor put you up to this? This isn't even a real medical document." William stood firm, his decades as a pediatrician having prepared him for confronting difficult parents. "The DNA analysis was performed at Boston Memorial Hospital's laboratory. I've included the chain of custody documentation verification from 2 separate lab technicians and my own professional certification of the results. You're welcome to contest it with another test, but the conclusion will be the same. James looked at me across the room, his expression a battlefield of betrayal and realization. For a moment I saw my little boy again, the 7-year-old who'd discovered there was no Santa Claus, devastated that the world wasn't what he'd believed it to be. "Everyone out," he said, his voice strangely calm. "Please, I apologize, but this party is over." My guests didn't need to be told twice. They grabbed purses, jackets, half-eaten plates of cake, and filed out with murmured apologies and concerned backward glances. Marianne squeezed my hand as she passed. David whispered, "Call if you need anything." In less than 5 minutes, my living room had emptied except for the 5 of us, me, William, James, Victoria, and Noah, who had wandered in from the backyard where he'd been playing with another child. "Daddy," Noah's small voice cut through the tension. "Why is everyone leaving? Is the party over?" James looked at his son, not his son with naked pain. "Noah, buddy, can you go up to the guest room and play on your tablet for a little while? The grown-ups need to talk." "But what about Grandma's birthday cake? We didn't sing yet." Victoria's composure snapped completely. "Noah, go upstairs now." The boy's eyes widened at his mother's tone. He looked from face to face, sensing the adult turmoil that had suddenly engulfed the room. William stepped in his grandfatherly manner, a balm to the child's confusion. "Noah, I have a special medical app on my phone with a game about the human body. Would you like to try to beat my high score while we finish some boring grown-up business down here?" Noah nodded, clearly relieved to escape the tension. As William led him upstairs, I caught my brother's eye and nodded my thanks. When William returned moments later, the storm broke. Victoria launched into a tirade, pacing the room like a caged tigress. "This is an ambush. A public humiliation orchestrated by a woman who's been trying to sabotage our marriage from day one. James, you can't seriously believe this. This fabrication." James stood motionless by the fireplace, the DNA results still clutched in his hand. "Is it true?" His voice was barely audible. "Is Noah not my son?" "Of course he's your son. You've raised him. You've loved him. Some piece of paper doesn't change that." "Answer the question, Victoria. Biologically, is Noah my child?" Victoria's silence answered before her words did. She stopped pacing and sank onto the sofa, her defensive posture collapsing. "It was one time. One mistake during that period when you were working 80-hour weeks and barely spoke to me." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "With Richard Townsend." The name hung in the air like smoke. Richard Townsend, James's former business partner, best man at their wedding, Noah's godfather. The man who had mysteriously relocated to Seattle 5 years ago, severing most ties with their social circle. James pressed his palms against his eyes. 8 years. You've lied to me for 8 years. He looked up suddenly. "Does Richard know?" Victoria shook her head. "No one knew. I never told anyone. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. I found out I was pregnant right after it happened, and I convinced myself the baby was yours. I wanted it to be yours. But you must have suspected. Noah has his eyes as dimples." James's voice rose. "Every time Richard held him at Christmas parties, at Noah's baptism, at his birthday parties, you knew he was holding his own son and said nothing. I chose you. I chose our family." Victoria rose to her feet. "I could have left, could have told Richard, but I didn't. I stayed and built a life with you. Doesn't that count for something?" James laughed, a hollow, wounded sound. "You're asking for credit for maintaining a lie that's defined our entire marriage, for letting me believe a child was mine when you knew there was a possibility he wasn't." He turned to me, his expression hardening. "And you? How long have you suspected? How long were you planning this public exposure?" I stepped forward, conscious of the eyes on me, of the bruise still visible on my face despite my best efforts with makeup. 3 days, James, since I saw Noah's blood type in his medical file. The same day your wife pushed me into the fireplace when I confronted her." "She didn't push you. She said you tripped." William cleared his throat. "James, I examined your mother after the incident. The pattern of bruising and the laceration are inconsistent with a trip and fall. They are, however, entirely consistent with being pushed and striking the corner of a hard object." James ran his hands through his hair, the gesture so like his father it made my heart ache. "This is insane. All of it. My entire life is a fabrication." Victoria moved toward him, reaching for his arm. "James, please. We can work through this. We can get counseling. We can—" He jerked away from her touch. Just don't." He turned to William. "Are you absolutely certain about these results? There's no possibility of an error." The analysis was conducted twice by 2 different technicians. The conclusion is irrefutable. Noah cannot possibly be your biological child. James nodded slowly, his lawyer's mind seemingly processing facts in sequence despite his emotional turmoil. I need to think. I need air. He moved toward the French doors leading to the backyard, then stopped and turned back. No one tell Noah anything. Not until we decide how to handle this. As James stepped outside, Victoria rounded on me, her voice a venomous hiss. Are you satisfied now you've finally done it, driven a wedge between me and James? Was publicly humiliating us both worth it? Was destroying your grandson's sense of security worth your petty revenge? A lifetime of restraint, of measured responses, of putting others' needs before my own, evaporated in that moment. Revenge, you assaulted me in my son's home. You've lied to him every day for 8 years about the paternity of his child. You smiled while he announced to a room full of people that you had taught me respect by giving me this. I gestured to my bruised face. And you dare speak to me about revenge? Victoria's face contorted. You've hated me from the beginning. Nothing I did was ever good enough for the precious Mitchell family legacy. I was always the outsider, the social climber who wasn't worthy of your perfect son. I welcomed you into our family. I helped plan your wedding. I babysit Noah whenever you asked. I kept my opinions to myself when you redecorated the house Robert grew up in and erased every trace of the Mitchell family history. My voice remained steady, though inside I was trembling. What I never did was assault you, lie to you, or deceive my own child about something as fundamental as his paternity. Victoria's laugh was brittle. Such a perfect mother-in-law. Such a perfect mother. Does James know about the affair you had while his father was alive? The one with his high school principal that almost cost you your teaching job? The accusation struck me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? I found letters. In the attic of our house, Robert's childhood home. Love letters from a Walter dated when James was in middle school. Quite passionate for a supposedly devoted wife. For a moment I couldn't speak. Then understanding dawned. Walter Davidson was Robert's cousin. He was dying of cancer. Those letters were to Robert, not to me. They were thanking him for financial support during Walter's treatment. I shook my head in disbelief. You went looking for dirt on me in our attic and misinterpreted correspondence between family members. Victoria's expression faltered. Before she could respond, the sound of footsteps on the stairs made us both turn. Noah stood halfway down his small face, a mask of confusion and distress. Mom, why are you yelling at Grandma? Victoria instantly transformed, her voice honeyed. Oh, sweetie, we're just having a grown-up discussion. I thought you were playing upstairs with Uncle William's game. He fell asleep in the chair. I got bored. Noah's eyes darted between us. Where's Daddy? I heard him shouting before. Victoria moved to the stairs, blocking Noah's descent. Daddy needed some fresh air. Let's go back upstairs and I'll find you something more fun to do. Noah resisted her guiding hand. I heard Daddy say I'm not his son. What does that mean? The blood drained from Victoria's face. Behind her, I heard the French doors open as James returned from the garden. The room froze in a tableau of painful revelation. Noah on the stairs, Victoria reaching for him, me standing by the fireplace, William in the doorway to the kitchen, and James at the threshold of the garden doors. Noah, James's voice cracked on the name. Come here, buddy. Noah descended the remaining stairs and crossed to James, who knelt to meet him at eye level. The resemblance between them that I'd always questioned was painfully absent now that I knew the truth. Noah's blue eyes so unlike the Mitchell family's brown, his dimpled chin nothing like James's square jawline. Did I do something wrong, Daddy? James gathered the boy into his arms, holding him close. No, buddy, you didn't do anything wrong at all. Over Noah's shoulder, his eyes met mine, then Victoria's filled with a pain so acute it seemed to physically radiate from him. No matter what happens, no matter what you hear or don't hear, I want you to know one thing. You are my son. In every way that matters, you are my son, and I love you. Noah pulled back his 8-year-old intuition, sensing the currents of adult complexity swirling around him. But I heard you say, you heard grown-ups saying some confusing things while they were upset. Right now I want you to go upstairs with Grandma. She's going to read you some of your favorite stories while Mom and I talk about some boring adult stuff. James looked at me. Mom, would you mind? I nodded, extending my hand to Noah. I have a new book about dinosaurs I've been saving for a special occasion. What do you say we check it out?" Noah hesitated, looking between his parents, sensing the tension. Then he nodded and took my hand. As we ascended the stairs, I heard James's voice, low and controlled, addressing Victoria. "We're going to discuss this calmly and rationally, for Noah's sake." In the guest bedroom, I read to Noah, answered his questions about dinosaurs, and did my best to maintain normalcy while my entire family imploded beneath us. After an hour, he fell asleep, emotionally exhausted by the day's undercurrents. I tucked the dinosaur book beside him and quietly left the room. Downstairs, the scene had shifted. Victoria sat alone on the sofa, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. William stood by the window, his back to the room. James was nowhere to be seen. "Where's James?" I asked, keeping my voice low to avoid waking Noah. Victoria looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but her voice steady. "He left, said he needed space to think. He's staying at the Four Seasons tonight." She laughed bitterly. "On my credit card, of course. His wallet's at home." I moved to sit in the armchair across from her. "What happens now, Victoria?" Now I pick up the pieces of the life you've shattered. Somehow explain to my 8-year-old why his father might not come home. Face our friends and colleagues after you've exposed my most private mistake in the most public way possible." She shook her head. "You must be so satisfied." "I take no pleasure in any of this. Certainly not in Noah's pain or James's. But the truth..." Victoria's voice rose again before she caught herself glancing toward the stairs. More quietly, she continued. "The truth is that you orchestrated this entire exposure to punish me. You could have spoken to James privately. You could have confronted me without an audience. Instead, you chose his mother's birthday party in front of all your friends to detonate a nuclear bomb in our family." William turned from the window. "Victoria Eleanor didn't choose the timing of your assault on her. She didn't choose your public lie about it. Those were your actions and James's. The consequences are the natural result of those choices." Victoria's gaze shifted to William, her eyes narrowing. "And you? A doctor violating medical ethics, conducting unauthorized DNA tests. I could report you to the medical board." "You could," William acknowledged. "Though I suspect neither you nor James want this matter to become any more public than it already is. Additionally, I'm retired, and my primary concern was the medical welfare of my grandnephew, who now has an incomplete family medical history." Victoria stood gathering her designer purse. "Noah and I will be staying at a hotel tonight. I'll come get him in a few minutes. I need to make some calls first." She moved toward the front door, then turned back. "This isn't over, Eleanor. James may be angry with me now, but when the shock wears off, he'll remember who's been the constant in his life for the past 10 years. And he'll remember who chose today of all days to destroy that life." After she left, William sat heavily in the chair opposite me. That went about as well as a train derailment. I closed my eyes, suddenly aware of the throbbing in my injured eye and the bone-deep fatigue that had settled over me. Did I do the right thing, William? Or has Victoria been right all along? Am I just a controlling mother who couldn't let go? William reached across and took my hand. "Eleanor, listen to me. Victoria assaulted you. She lied about it. James not only believed her lie, but took pride in it. You didn't create this situation. You merely refused to participate in a dangerous fiction. And now Noah will suffer for all of it. Noah has been living in a household built on deception his entire life. The truth, painful as it may be, now gives him a chance at authentic relationships moving forward." William squeezed my hand. "You are not responsible for protecting Victoria from the consequences of her actions, or James from his. Your responsibility is to yourself and to the truth." The truth. Such a simple word for such a complicated reality. I thought of Robert, wondering what he would have done in my position. Would he have exposed Victoria's lie, confronted James about his callous treatment of his mother, or would he have counseled patience? Forgiveness, a private resolution, I would never know. Robert had been gone for 20 years, leaving me to navigate the complexities of family alone. I'd done my best trying to balance honesty with kindness, boundaries with connection. Perhaps I'd failed. Perhaps, as Victoria suggested, I'd been too controlling, too invested in James's life. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I would not allow myself to be assaulted, then publicly humiliated, then gaslighted into believing I was the problem. Not even for my beloved son. Not even for Noah. Victoria returned 30 minutes later, composed once more to collect Noah. The sleeping child barely stirred as she gathered him into her arms. "I've booked us at the Liberty Hotel," she informed me stiffly. "James knows where we are if he wants to reach us." At the door, she paused. "For what it's worth, Eleanor, I never meant for you to get hurt that day. I lost my temper. It was wrong, and I regret it." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was more than I'd expected. "Take care of Noah, Victoria. Whatever happens between you and James, whatever happens between you and me, Noah deserves better than to be a casualty of adult conflicts." She nodded once, then left with my grandson in her arms. William stayed the night in my guest room, concerned about leaving me alone after such an emotional day. But once he'd retired, I found myself restless, wandering the rooms of my home like a ghost. In my study, I unlocked the safe hidden behind a painting, a security measure Robert had insisted on when his jewelry designs had started to gain value. Inside were the documents pertaining to Mitchell Fine Jewelry, the ownership papers, the financial statements, the expansion plans for a new flagship store in New York. 20 years of work of vision of building something meaningful from the ashes of loss. James had no idea. He thought I lived comfortably but modestly on my teacher's pension and whatever small income Mom's little jewelry shop provided. The truth would shock him that his mother had built a multi-million-dollar business while raising him alone, that she had financial resources beyond anything he and Victoria had accumulated with their prestigious careers. I'd never told him because it hadn't seemed important. Money hadn't been what defined us as a family. Now I wondered if I'd been wrong to keep this part of my life private. If James had known his mother was a successful businesswoman, would he have respected me more? Would he have been so quick to believe Victoria's version of events? The next morning, William left after extracting a promise that I would call him if I needed anything. The house felt emptier than it had in years, the remnants of the birthday party gift bags stacked on the sideboard, half-empty champagne bottles, a cake with only one slice missing, serving as evidence of the celebration that had imploded. I was washing teacups when the doorbell rang. James stood on the porch, his appearance shocking me. In just one night, he seemed to have aged years. His usually immaculate suit was rumpled, his face unshaven, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept. "May I come in?" I stepped aside wordlessly. James entered and moved directly to the living room where just yesterday he had proudly announced that his wife had taught me respect by assaulting me. He stood in the same spot now, staring at the space as if trying to comprehend how his life had unraveled in it. "I owe you an apology, Mom. Several, actually." His voice was rough with fatigue. "I should have believed you about what happened at our house. I should never have said what I did at your party. I've been a terrible son." I sat on the sofa, motioning for him to join me. "You've been a son who trusted his wife, James. That's not terrible. Misguided in this case, but not terrible." He sank down beside me. His shoulders slumped. "I spoke with Victoria last night after I left, for hours. She admitted everything about Richard, about pushing you about the lies." He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "She said you found out because of Noah's blood type in his medical records. Is that true?" I nodded. "I taught biology for 30 years, James. When I saw that Noah was AB positive, I knew immediately there was an issue given that you're type O. All these years I never questioned it. Never noticed. What kind of father doesn't even know his child's blood type?" His voice broke. "What kind of son doesn't believe his own mother when she's hurt?" "James, look at me." I waited until his eyes met mine. "You made a mistake. A serious one, yes, but still just a mistake. The question now is what you're going to do moving forward." He ran a hand over his face. "I don't know. Victoria wants us to try counseling to stay together for Noah's sake. She says she's never been unfaithful except for that one time with Richard, that she truly loves me and wants our marriage to work." "And what do you want?" He hesitated. "I want to go back to yesterday morning before any of this happened. I want my life back, the one where I thought I knew who I was, who my family was." I reached for his hand, noticing how much it resembled Robert's, the same long fingers, the same prominent knuckles. Whatever doubts existed about Noah's paternity, there had never been any about James's. He was Robert's son through and through in appearance and in the analytical mind that had made him such a successful attorney. "We can't go back, James. We can only go forward, hopefully with more honesty, more respect for each other." He nodded slowly. "I keep thinking about what I said at your party. about Victoria teaching you respect. I've replayed it in my head 100 times and I don't recognize that person. That's not how Dad raised me. That's not what he taught me about treating women, treating family. No, it's not, I agreed quietly. Your father would be deeply disappointed by those words, but he would also believe in your capacity to learn and grow from this mistake. James looked around the room, his gaze landing on a photograph of Robert on the mantelpiece. I miss him. Even after all these years, I still find myself thinking, I should ask Dad about this. Especially now. I miss him too. Every day. I squeezed his hand. But we've managed without him for 20 years. We've built lives he would be proud of in many ways. James's expression changed, a flicker of something curiosity perhaps crossing his face. Have we... I realize I don't actually know much about your life these days, Mom. The jewelry shop, your bridge club, your volunteer work at the literacy center. But what else are you happy? The question caught me off guard. When was the last time anyone had asked about my happiness? When was the last time James had expressed interest in my life beyond how it intersected with his? I'm fulfilled, James. I've built something meaningful from what your father left behind. The jewelry business has become significant. He frowned. Significant how I thought it was just a small boutique operation. It was at the beginning, but over the years it's grown. Mitchell Fine Jewelry now has 3 locations across Massachusetts and is preparing to open a flagship store in Manhattan next year. Last year's revenue exceeded $30 million. James's jaw literally dropped. 30 million? Mom, are you serious? Why didn't you ever tell me? You never asked. The words came out more sharply than I'd intended. More gently, I added, you were busy with your own career, your own family, and I didn't build the business for recognition or to impress anyone. I did it because it connected me to your father's memory, because it provided security for our family, and because quite simply I turned out to be good at it. I had no idea. James shook his head in disbelief. All these years I've thought of you as, I don't know, just Mom, the retired teacher with the little jewelry hobby. I never imagined you as a successful business owner in your own right. There's a lot we don't know about each other, James. Perhaps that's part of the problem. He nodded slowly, processing this new understanding of his mother. Victoria and Noah are at the Liberty Hotel. She wants me to come see them today to start figuring out what happens next. And will you? I need to for Noah's sake, if nothing else. James hesitated. Would you come with me? Not to meet with Victoria, but afterward. To see Noah. He was asking for you this morning when Victoria called. I think he's confused and scared, and you've always been so good with him. My heart squeezed at the thought of Noah caught in the crossfire of adult deceptions and revelations. Of course I'll come. Whatever is happening between the adults in his life, Noah needs to know he's loved unconditionally. James stood looking marginally more centered than when he'd arrived. I should go. I need to shower and change before meeting Victoria. At the door, he turned back. Mom, one more thing. The DNA test. How did Uncle William get my DNA to compare with Noah's? I felt heat rise in my cheeks. He used a hairbrush of yours that I'd kept. From when you lived at home. You kept my hairbrush for 20 years. I kept a lot of things, James. The hairbrush, your first baseball glove, the tie you wore to senior prom, the first brief you filed as an attorney. Mothers do that, preserve pieces of their children's lives. James's expression softened. I never knew that either. He stepped forward and embraced me, the first real hug he'd initiated in years. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. I'll make this right. Somehow, I promise. After he left, I sat alone in my living room replaying our conversation. For the first time in years, I felt seen by my son, not just as his mother, as an extension of his childhood, but as a complete person with a life and identity beyond my role in his world. The pain of recent events still throbbed both physically in my healing face and emotionally in my wounded heart. But beneath the pain ran a current of something like hope, a sense that perhaps from this broken place a stronger, more honest family might eventually emerge. I thought of Noah waiting at the hotel with his mother, his world in turmoil. I thought of James grappling with betrayal and identity. I thought of Victoria facing the consequences of years of deception. And I thought of myself no longer willing to be silenced, to be diminished, to be less than I truly was for the comfort of others. Silence is not absence, I reminded myself. Silence is a choice, and I was done choosing it. The Liberty Hotel's irony wasn't lost on me, a former prison transformed into luxury accommodations. As I walked through its magnificent atrium past the aptly named Clink restaurant, I considered how we all create our own prisons fashioned from expectations and lies. I'd been imprisoned by silence, James, by blind trust, Victoria by deception. Only Noah remained truly free, though that innocence now teetered on a precipice. James had texted that his meeting with Victoria was running longer than expected. He suggested I wait in the hotel's restaurant, promising to bring Noah down when they finished. I found a quiet corner table and ordered tea, watching well-dressed patrons drift through the space, oblivious to the family drama unfolding in a suite above. The bruise around my eye had faded to a yellowish smudge, still visible, but no longer shocking. A week had passed since my birthday party implosion. 7 days since William had handed James that envelope. 168 hours of upheaval that had redefined everything. My phone buzzed with a message from William. "How's it going? Call if you need reinforcements." My brother ever vigilant since childhood. I texted back that all was calm for now, then set my phone aside as a familiar small figure raced across the restaurant toward me. "Grandma." Noah launched himself into my arms with such force that my chair skidded backward. His small body radiated warmth and that peculiar clean soap smell of recently bathed children. I held him close, acutely aware that no matter what genetics said, this child was family. James approached more slowly, his expression guarded. "Noah, remember what we talked about? Gentle with Grandma's face, it's still healing." Noah pulled back immediately, his blue eyes so obviously Richard Townsend's in retrospect wide with concern. "Sorry, Grandma. Does your eye still hurt? Mom said you fell, but then I heard Dad say that wasn't true," and they started arguing again. I shot James a look over Noah's head. He shrugged helplessly, the gesture saying volumes about how difficult maintaining a unified front had become. "My eye is much better, sweetheart. Just a bit yellow now, see, like I've been colored with a highlighter pen." I tapped the bruise lightly, drawing a reluctant smile from Noah. James slid into the chair opposite us. "Victoria will be down shortly. She's composing herself." The tight set of his mouth suggested their discussion hadn't gone smoothly. "Noah, why don't you tell Grandma about the hotel pool?" As Noah launched into an enthusiastic description of the Liberty's super awesome swimming facilities, I studied James. Shadows still hung beneath his eyes, but he'd recovered something of his normal appearance. Clean-shaven hair, neatly combed, wearing a fresh button-down shirt and slacks. Not the polished attorney from a week ago, but not the shell-shocked man who'd appeared at my door either. Noah's excited chatter about the pool's waterfall feature faltered as Victoria approached our table. She'd clearly spent considerable time on her appearance. Her makeup flawless, her caramel-highlighted hair falling in perfect waves. Only the tightness around her eyes betrayed her distress. "Eleanor," she inclined her head stiffly. "Thank you for coming. Noah has been asking for you." "I've missed him." I squeezed Noah's shoulder. "The house feels too quiet without visitors." Victoria's gaze swept over my face, lingering on the fading bruise. Something flickered in her expression. Regret, perhaps, or simply calculation of how the visible evidence might affect her position. "Noah, honey, why don't we order some ice cream?" She signaled a waiter without waiting for a response. "James and I have had a productive conversation. We'd like to discuss next steps with you, Eleanor, if you're amenable." "I'm listening." I kept my tone neutral for Noah's sake, though tension crackled between us adults like static electricity before a storm. "We've decided to try counseling, both couples therapy and family therapy." James spoke carefully, watching my reaction. "We'll be living separately for now. I've taken a short-term lease on an apartment in Back Bay." Victoria interjected her voice, maintaining its public smoothness. "We agree that Noah's welfare must come first. Whatever issues exist between us adults shouldn't affect his sense of security and belonging." That's commendable. I meant it sincerely. Whatever my feelings about Victoria prioritizing Noah's well-being was the right approach. "We'd also like your help." James leaned forward, lowering his voice as Noah became distracted by the enormous ice cream sundae the waiter delivered. "Noah will be splitting time between Victoria's and my places, but he's asking questions we're not fully prepared to answer yet, about why I've moved out about the argument at your birthday party." Victoria's perfectly manicured nails drummed once against the table's surface. "We haven't told him about the paternity situation. We feel he's too young to process that information properly." "And Richard Townsend," I kept my voice barely above a whisper. "Does he know?" Victoria's composure cracked slightly. No, and I have no intention of telling him. Richard has his own family in Seattle now, a wife, twin daughters. Disrupting his life serves no purpose. I glanced at James, curious about his position on this aspect. He sighed, rubbing his temple. I've insisted on a full DNA panel for Noah for medical history purposes. Beyond that, I'm not sure what's right. Legally, I'm listed as his father. I've raised him since birth. In every way that matters, he is my son. But biologically, he isn't. Victoria's words came out sharper than she'd likely intended. She modulated her tone, continuing more softly. What we're asking, Eleanor, is that you support the narrative we're presenting to Noah for now. That Mom and Dad are having some problems and need space to work on them, but that everyone loves him, and nothing will change that. The request seemed reasonable on its surface. Shielding an 8-year-old from the full complexity of adult relationships made sense. And yet I'd seen too many family secrets fester over the years, too many temporary deceptions become permanent barriers to authenticity. I'll support whatever approach helps Noah feel secure, I said carefully. But I won't lie to him if he asks me direct questions. I won't pretend the incident with my eye was an accident if he asks specifically. Children deserve honesty delivered appropriately for their age. Victoria's lips thinned. Even if that honesty damages his relationship with me, even if it forces him to see his mother as someone who made a terrible mistake, I won't volunteer information that isn't mine to share. Victoria, I'm simply saying I won't actively participate in creating more falsehoods. I held her gaze steadily. Hasn't this family had enough of those? James intervened before Victoria could respond. That seems fair, Mom. Noah trusts you. We just ask that you consider the impact of your words on him. The conversation paused as Noah's face smeared with chocolate sauce rejoined it. Are you guys talking about me? Is it about school? Because I didn't mean to forget my science project. Ms. Peterson gave me an extension. Victoria immediately shifted into maternal mode, wiping Noah's face with a napkin. No, sweetheart, we're just talking about the schedule for next week. You'll be staying with Daddy at his new apartment for a few days, remember? Noah's expression clouded. But why can't we all live together like before? Why does everybody have to be in different houses now? The question hung in the air, each adult scrambling internally for an appropriate response. James reached for Noah's hand across the table. Sometimes grown-ups need to figure things out separately before they can be together in a healthy way. Mom and I are working on some big feelings right now. Because you were yelling about me not really being your son. Noah's innocent question detonated like a bomb at our table. Victoria gasped. James paled visibly. I sat perfectly still, unwilling to interfere, but aching for all three of them. Noah, where did you hear that? Victoria's voice trembled despite her evident effort to control it. At Grandma's party, I was coming downstairs to ask about cake, and I heard Daddy say that a DNA test showed he's not my real father. Noah's lower lip quivered. What does that mean if you're not my real dad? Then who am I adopted? Why didn't anybody tell me? James moved around the table and knelt beside Noah's chair, his expression raw with love and pain. Noah, listen to me. This is complicated grown-up stuff that Mom and I are still figuring out how to explain. But the most important thing, the absolute most important thing, is that I am your dad. I've been your dad since the day you were born. I've loved you every single day of your life, and that will never ever change. Noah's eyes filled with tears. But the DNA test. DNA is just one small part of what makes a family. James continued, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his face. Being a real father means tucking you in at night, teaching you to ride a bike, helping with homework, cheering at your soccer games. It's about love and showing up, not about biology. Victoria touched Noah's shoulder. Sweetheart, every family is unique. Some families have step-parents or adoptive parents. Some have 2 moms or 2 dads. What matters is that we love each other. Noah looked between them, then at me, his young face struggling to process these complex adult concepts. So I'm not going away. Nobody's sending me somewhere else. Going away. Victoria looked stricken. Noah, no, why would you think that? Because Tommy at school said when his parents found out his dad wasn't his real dad, he had to go live with his biological father in Phoenix. I don't want to go to Phoenix. I want to stay with you and Daddy and visit Grandma and play soccer with my friends. James enfolded Noah in his arms. You're not going anywhere, buddy. I promise. You're staying right here with us. I watched Noah cling to James, his small shoulders shaking with sobs of relief. In that moment, despite everything, I felt a surge of pride in my son. Whatever his failings toward me, whatever mistakes he'd made in his marriage, he was showing up for Noah with love and reassurance when it mattered most. Victoria caught my eye over Noah's head, and for once there was no hostility in her gaze, just shared concern for the child caught in our complicated adult drama. I nodded slightly, acknowledging this momentary alliance. After Noah calmed down, helped by a second smaller ice cream bribe, James suggested he and I take a walk around the hotel's courtyard while Victoria made some calls. As we strolled the former prison yard, now an elegant garden space, Noah's small hand in mine, James walked quietly beside us. "You handled that beautifully," I said softly as Noah ran ahead to examine a fountain. "He needed that reassurance." James shoved his hands in his pockets. "I meant every word. DNA doesn't change how I feel about him. If anything, this past week has made me more certain that he's my son in every way that counts." "And Victoria, where do things stand there?" A shadow crossed James's face. "Complicated. I'm still so angry, Mom. Not just about Noah's paternity, though, that's a massive deception, but about how she treated you. About how I let her treat you." He looked at the fading bruise around my eye. "I keep replaying that moment at your party, hearing myself say those words. I don't recognize that person. I don't know how I became him." We all have moments where we don't recognize ourselves, James. The question is what we do afterward. That's just it. I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to walk away completely, file for divorce, fight for custody of Noah. Another part remembers the good years, the life we built together, and wonders if it can be salvaged. He watched Noah splashing his hand in the fountain. Then there's him. Noah adores Victoria. She's been a good mother despite everything else. Tearing him away from her would cause tremendous pain. I considered my words carefully. When your father died, I was faced with raising you alone. It was terrifying. I made mistakes, plenty of them, but I tried to make decisions based on what would bring more love into your life, not less. Sometimes that's the only compass we have in impossible situations. James nodded slowly. "That's part of why I wanted to talk to you today, actually. Not just about Noah, but about us, you and me." He turned to face me directly. "I've been a terrible son, Mom. I've taken you for granted, dismissed your concerns, chosen Victoria over you again and again. And then at the lowest point, I publicly humiliated you in your own home. I don't know how to make that right." The directness of his apology caught me off guard. For years, I'd longed for James to see me, really see me as a complete human being worthy of respect, not just as a mother whose purpose was to support his life. Now that it was happening, I found myself uncertain how to respond. "You don't need to make it right, James. You just need to do better moving forward." "I want to. I've been thinking a lot about Dad this week, about what he taught me about respecting women, about family loyalty. I've fallen so far from those lessons." Noah ran back to us, interrupting the moment. "Daddy, can we go swimming now, you promised?" James smiled down at him. "In a little bit, bud. First, how about we walk Grandma back to the restaurant? I think she and I need to finish our conversation." As we made our way back through the hotel's cavernous interior, I marveled at how different James seemed, already more present, more reflective, more like the thoughtful young man Robert and I had raised. Crisis had a way of stripping people down to their essence, revealing what truly mattered beneath the accumulated layers of habit and compromise. We found Victoria waiting at our table, her phone still in hand. Her expression was uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Noah, your swimming instructor, called. He can meet us at the pool in 20 minutes for your private lesson. Why don't you go up to the room and get your swim trunks ready?" Noah looked at James. "But Daddy was going to swim with me." "I'll join you after I finish talking with Grandma," James assured him. "Go get ready and I'll be up soon." After Noah reluctantly departed, Victoria exhaled slowly. "I just got off the phone with my therapist. She thinks—" She paused, seeming to struggle with her next words. "She thinks I should apologize to you properly, Eleanor. Not just for your injury, but for the pattern of disrespect I've shown you over the years." The admission clearly cost her considerable pride. Victoria was not a woman accustomed to acknowledging wrongdoing. "I pushed you. It was wrong and inexcusable, actually. My temper has always been my worst quality, but that's not an excuse. I hurt you physically, then lied about it to James and everyone else. I'm truly sorry." I studied her face, looking for signs of calculation or insincerity. Instead, I saw only exhaustion, and what appeared to be genuine remorse. "Thank you for saying that, Victoria. I accept your apology for the physical incident." I chose my next words with care. As for the pattern between us, that's more complicated. We've both contributed to the dysfunction in our relationship over the years. Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly at my partial acknowledgement of mutual responsibility. "My therapist suggested that I might have been threatened by your relationship with James, that I perceived you as competition rather than as family, and responded accordingly." James looked between us, clearly uncomfortable being discussed this way, but remaining silent. "That's not uncommon in mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationships," I acknowledged. "I've probably been more involved, more opinionated than I should have been at times." Victoria fidgeted with her wedding ring. "Regardless, assaulting you was unforgivable, as was encouraging James to take pride in it." She glanced at him, then back at me. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Eleanor, just acknowledging what I did was wrong." The admission hung between us imperfect but significant. In my 68 years, I'd learned that true redemption begins not with grand gestures, but with simple truth-telling. Victoria had taken that first step, however reluctantly. "Where do we go from here?" I directed the question to both of them. James leaned forward. "Victoria and I are taking things day by day, living apart, attending counseling, focusing on Noah's well-being. But there's something specific I wanted to discuss with you, Mom." Victoria tensed visibly. James continued. "I've been thinking about what you said about your business, about Mitchell Fine Jewelry. I had no idea it had grown so significant. Why have you kept that part of your life so separate from me?" The question pierced something deep within me, a wound I hadn't fully acknowledged was there. "Because you never asked, James. You assumed I was just a retired teacher with a hobby. You never inquired about the business's growth or my accomplishments. When I tried to share news, a new location opening, a major client acquisition, you'd change the subject back to your own career, or to Noah." James winced. "I've been self-absorbed, completely caught up in my own world. It wasn't entirely your fault." I surprised myself with this admission. "I enabled it. I didn't demand recognition or attention. I kept my successes quiet, partly out of habit. Your father never liked ostentatious displays, but also out of some misguided notion that a mother shouldn't outshine her child." Victoria interjected, "I had no idea either. About the scale of your business, I mean. James always described it as Mom's little shop. It hasn't been little for at least a decade." A hint of pride crept into my voice. "Last year's revenue exceeded $30 million. We're opening a flagship store on Madison Avenue next spring. The Mitchell designs have been featured in Vogue and worn on red carpets." I shrugged slightly. "I didn't build it for recognition. I built it because it connected me to Robert, because I discovered I had a talent for it, and because it gave me purpose after you left home, James." "I want to see it," James said suddenly. "The full operation. Your design studio, your offices, everything. I want to understand this part of your life I've been ignoring." Victoria shifted in her seat. "We should probably get back to Noah soon." James turned to her. "You take him for his swim lesson. I'd like to spend the afternoon with my mother, if that's okay with both of you." The request, so simple yet so meaningful, warmed something long cold within me. When was the last time James had voluntarily chosen to spend time with just me? Years, certainly. "I'd like that very much," I said softly. Victoria nodded, an unreadable expression crossing her face. "Of course. Noah will be disappointed, but I'll explain you're spending time with Grandma." She gathered her purse. "Eleanor, thank you for coming today, for supporting Noah despite everything." After Victoria departed, James and I left the hotel, stepping into the crisp autumn air. We walked in companionable silence to where I'd parked my car. "The Volvo's still running strong, I see." James smiled as I unlocked the vehicle. "Dad would be pleased. He always said Swedish cars were built to last." 14 years and counting. I patted the steering wheel affectionately as James settled into the passenger seat. "Though I've been thinking of upgrading. The new electric models are appealing." As we drove through Boston toward the Mitchell Fine Jewelry headquarters in the Seaport District, James asked questions about the business. Real questions showing genuine interest. How had I expanded from one location to 3? What was my management structure? Did I still design pieces myself, or had I hired other designers? I answered freely, feeling a burden lifting with each mile. For so long, I'd kept my professional success separate from my identity as James's mother. as if the two couldn't coexist. Now, as I described building the company from Robert's small client list into a recognized luxury brand, I felt myself becoming whole in my son's eyes for perhaps the first time. The Mitchell Fine Jewelry headquarters occupied the top 2 floors of a gleaming glass building overlooking Boston Harbor. As we rode the elevator up, James whistled softly. "This is definitely not Mom's little shop." The doors opened directly into a reception area designed to evoke the same elegance as our jewelry, understated luxury in neutral tones, with glass display cases showcasing signature pieces. The receptionist's eyes widened at the sight of me on a Saturday. "Mrs. Mitchell, we weren't expecting you today." "Impromptu visit, Melissa. This is my son, James. I'm showing him around." James extended his hand. "Nice to meet you." Melissa's surprise was evident. Everyone at the company knew of James, but few had ever met him. "Welcome to Mitchell Fine Jewelry, Mr. Mitchell. Would you like me to call Mr. Abernathy to give you the tour?" "No need to disturb Daniel on the weekend," I replied. "We'll just wander through. Is anyone working in the design studio today?" "Just Ms. Patel. She's finishing the CAD models for the spring collection." I nodded and led James through a set of double doors into the main office area. As we walked, employees looked up in surprise, quickly standing or offering greetings. James observed it all with increasing astonishment, the evident respect my staff showed the scale of the operation, with its marketing department, accounting division, design team, and production coordination. "Mom, this is incredible. You've built an entire corporate infrastructure here." It evolved gradually. As we grew, I brought operations in-house, one department at a time. The only aspect we still fully outsource is manufacturing, though we maintain strict quality control. I guided him through the various departments, introducing him to the few weekend workers present. Finally, we reached the heart of the company, my personal design studio, a light-filled corner space with views of the harbor. One wall displayed framed magazine features and celebrity photos wearing Mitchell pieces. Another held technical drawings from Robert's original hand sketches to current computer renderings. James moved slowly around the room, taking it all in. "All these years," he murmured, stopping before a framed photograph of Jennifer Lawrence wearing Mitchell earrings at the Oscars. "All these years, and I had no idea." "Would it have mattered?" I asked quietly. "Would knowing I'd built something successful have changed how you saw me?" James turned his expression pained. "Of course it would have. Not because success itself matters, but because this represents who you really are, creative, determined, visionary. I've been seeing only a fraction of you, Mom, the fraction that intersected with my life." He moved to my design desk, where drawings for the spring collection lay scattered. "May I?" At my nod, he picked up a sketch for a necklace, an intricate pattern of diamonds set to catch light from multiple angles. "This is beautiful. Did you design it?" "Yes. It's inspired by the way sunlight filtered through the maple tree in our backyard when you were small. You used to call it fairy light when you were about 4. James looked up, startled. "I did? I don't remember that." "You wouldn't. Children rarely remember their early years, but parents hold those memories forever." I moved to stand beside him. My designs often incorporate fragments of our family history patterns from Robert's original work, shapes that remind me of places we visited together, light effects that echo significant moments. "So even as you built this separate life, this empire, really we were still part of it." "You and your father have never been separate from any part of my life, James, even when you couldn't see it." He set down the drawing carefully. "I've been so blind. To who you are, to what Victoria did, to everything. We see what we're prepared to see." I perched on the edge of my design table. "The question is, what do you see now, and what will you do with that vision?" James ran a hand through his hair, so like Robert in that gesture. "I see that I need to rebuild relationships based on truth and respect, not convenience and assumption. With you, with Noah, even with Victoria, whatever form that relationship takes moving forward." "And what about with yourself? What truths do you need to acknowledge there?" He looked surprised by the question. "With myself? You've spent years becoming the person you thought you should be. Successful attorney, devoted husband, involved father. But somewhere along the way, you lost touch with the values your father and I tried to instill. The James who stood in my living room announcing that his wife had taught me respect by assaulting me, that wasn't the man we raised you to be." James flinched at the reminder. "No, it wasn't." He moved to the window, gazing out at the harbor. I've been thinking about that moment constantly, trying to understand how I became someone who could say those words, who could take pride in violence against his own mother. And have you found an answer? Not a complete one, but I think I've been living on autopilot, following the path of least resistance. It was easier to believe Victoria than to question her. Easier to dismiss your concerns than to consider painful possibilities. Easier to maintain the image of a perfect family than to examine its foundations. He turned back to face me. I chose comfort over truth again and again, until the truth became impossible to ignore. I nodded, recognizing the insight as significant. We all make those compromises sometimes. The trouble comes when they become a pattern, when self-deception becomes a habit. Like Victoria deceiving herself that Noah's paternity would never come to light, or me deceiving myself that our marriage was solid despite the obvious issues. James shook his head. Or you perhaps deceiving yourself that I didn't need to know about this part of your life. His gentle challenge surprised me. Touché. So where does that leave us all? I considered the question carefully. At a crossroads, I suppose, each of us facing choices about how much truth we can bear, how much honesty we're willing to practice moving forward. Noah deserves that honesty, doesn't he? About his biological father. Eventually, yes, when he's mature enough to process it. But right now he needs stability more than complete disclosure. James nodded. Victoria and I agree on that much at least. We'll tell him more when he's older in age-appropriate ways. He hesitated. And what about us, Mom? Where do we go from here? I smiled slightly. That depends on what you want. I'm not going anywhere. I want to know you, the whole you, not just the parts that fit my preconceptions. I want Noah to know his remarkable grandmother, the business mogul, as well as the cookie baker. James took a step toward me. And I want to be worthy of being your son again. James, I said softly, you have always been worthy of being my son, even when you disappointed me, even when you hurt me. That's what unconditional love means. He blinked rapidly, and I pretended not to notice the moisture gathering in his eyes. I don't deserve that kind of forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about choosing to move forward unburdened by the past. I stood and moved to join him at the window. Besides, I haven't been perfect either. I've kept parts of myself hidden, maintained barriers that perhaps weren't necessary. Will you let me in now? Really in? I'm trying to right now. I gestured around the studio. This is a start. James surprised me by pulling me into a gentle hug, careful of my still healing face. It's a good start. Thank you. The moment stretched between us, bridging years of disconnection. Then James's phone buzzed with a text message. He checked it, smiling slightly. Noah wants to know if we can all have dinner together tonight, you, me, him, and Victoria, at that Italian place you like in the North End. The invitation represented a complexity I hadn't anticipated. Breaking bread with the woman who had assaulted me, lied about it, and encouraged my son to take pride in it. And yet for Noah's sake, and perhaps for the healing of our fractured family, I needed to consider it. Tell him yes, I said finally. But I'll need to stop home and change first. James nodded, his relief evident. Thank you, Mom. As we prepared to leave the office, James paused by a wall displaying a timeline of the company's growth. You know, Dad would be incredibly proud of what you've built here. Not just the business success, but the way you've honored his legacy while creating something uniquely yours. The comment touched a deep place within me. I hope so. I felt his presence throughout this journey, guiding me in ways I can't quite explain. He's been gone 20 years, but sometimes I still feel him so strongly, especially this past week when everything fell apart. I kept thinking about what he would advise, how he would handle such a betrayal. I placed my hand on James's arm. Your father wasn't perfect, James. No one is, but he believed in second chances and redemption. He also believed in maintaining one's dignity through life's hardest moments. Like you did at the birthday party, standing there with your head high despite everything. I hadn't thought of it that way, but James was right. In that terrible moment of public humiliation, something of Robert's spirit had sustained me, his belief in facing adversity with grace, in never allowing others to diminish your essential worth. Perhaps we both need to channel a bit more of Robert these days, I suggested. His compassion, as well as his backbone. James nodded thoughtfully. I'd like that. As we drove to my home so I could change for dinner, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Noah's upcoming soccer tournament, a particularly challenging case James was working on my plans for the Manhattan store opening. The ease between us felt both novel and familiar, like rediscovering an old favorite book. At home, I invited James in while I changed clothes. He wandered the living room examining photographs and mementos he'd seen 1,000 times, but perhaps never truly noticed. When I emerged in a simple navy dress and pearls, I found him standing before the mantel holding a small wooden box I kept there. "I remember this," he said, turning the intricately carved box in his hands. "Dad made it, didn't he?" "Yes. It was the first gift he ever gave me on our 3rd date. He'd carved it himself." James opened the lid carefully. Inside lay a collection of small objects: a pressed flower, a tiny silver thimble, a smooth stone, a folded paper crane. "What are these moments?" I moved beside him, pointing to each item in turn. "The flower is from our first picnic at the public garden. The thimble he found at an antique store because I'd mentioned learning to sew for my grandmother. The stone is from the beach where he proposed. The paper crane he folded from our dinner receipt on our last anniversary before he died." James touched the items gently. "You've kept these all this time." "Some memories are too precious to trust to the mind alone. They need physical anchors in the world." I smiled up at my son. "I have a similar box for you, you know. With your first lost tooth, the ribbon from your high school graduation cap, the corner of the newspaper announcing your first major legal victory." James looked startled, then deeply moved. "You've been the keeper of our family memories all these years, haven't you? While Dad and I moved forward, you've been ensuring the past wasn't forgotten. That's part of a mother's job, I think. To maintain the threads that connect past to present, to hold the family story even as new chapters are written." He carefully replaced the box on the mantel. "I want Noah to know these stories. About his grandfather, about our family history. Even with everything that's happened, he deserves to know where he comes from, all sides of it." "He will. We'll make sure of it together." As we prepared to leave for dinner to face Victoria across a restaurant table and attempt some semblance of family normalcy for Noah's sake, I found myself filled with an unexpected sense of hope. The past week had brought pain and revelation in equal measure, tearing down facades to expose painful truths. But within that destruction lay the possibility of rebuilding on firmer foundations, relationships based on honesty, mutual respect, and clear-eyed love. I thought of the birthday that had begun this upheaval, my 68th, the time when many women find themselves increasingly invisible in society, dismissed as irrelevant or decorative. Instead, I stood at the threshold of a new chapter, more fully seen and appreciated by my son than perhaps ever before. My professional accomplishments finally acknowledged my voice heard, rather than ignored. The bruise around my eye had nearly faded, but its impact lingered, a reminder that speaking truth comes with consequences, sometimes painful ones. Yet silence exacts its own price, often higher in the long run. I had chosen to break my silence, to stand in my truth, despite the cost. Now, watching James hold the door for me as we stepped into the evening air, I knew I would choose truth again, even knowing the pain it would bring. Some prices are worth paying for the freedom that lies beyond.